Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Narcissism Storytelling Project, brought to you by Poisonous People. If you're not familiar with how this project works or you have any questions, please be sure to view the video titled The Narcissism Storytelling Project User Manual. And if you have any questions after seeing that video, please leave me a comment on that video and I'll answer your question right away. Today, I'm going to tell you the story of my very first toxic person, or more accurately, my first memory of an encounter with a toxic person. And this happened when I was in kindergarten. Literally, this happened when I was in my kindergarten classroom. At that time, the way that the school was set up was we had an A group and a B group. The A group would come to class in the morning session, leave at midday, and then the B group would come for the afternoon session. And then halfway through the year, we would switch. And this gave our teacher a full day of teaching. So naturally, she's going to need a lunch break. And depending on what day of the week it was, she would take her lunch break either at the beginning of the afternoon session or the end of the morning session. So this was routine. We fully expected our teacher to leave a couple days a week. And when that happened, we were given some activity, and there was usually an adult that was brought into the classroom to watch over us. And these adults, they're basically just babysitting for an hour. They're not certified teachers. They're not trained in child development or anything like that. These were probably women that they pulled from the cafeteria. This one day, my teacher left for lunch. This lady from the main office comes in, and we were given a big tin of crayons for each table. So we each sat at a table that had like maybe 5 or 6 kids, and we had these massive sheets of paper, and we were instructed to just draw pictures, just have fun drawing and coloring until your teacher comes back. That was it. Pretty simple, right? This lady who was watching us really didn't have much to do. So, I'm terrible at drawing pictures. I can't draw to save my life. In fact, the last time I drew something that actually would imply that I had any talent in this area would be kindergarten, because the type of drawings I was doing back then were pretty good for a kindergarten kid, but now I still draw like I'm in kindergarten. So I don't draw very well. That particular day, I finished my picture early. I sat back, I looked at my work, and I was so impressed with what I had done because I don't draw. I looked at this picture and I said, wow, this is really good. Like, this is one of my best things I've ever drawn. I definitely want to bring this home to show my mom. And I'm looking next to me, and all the kids next to me are still working. And I started to get a little concerned, like, I don't want anybody spilling their nasty juice on my paper. I don't want anyone to start roughhousing next to me, and then there's an accident and my paper gets torn. And then I started thinking to myself, well, what if my teacher comes back and she collects the pictures, and then she's going to give them back to us at the end of the day? But what if she forgets? I don't want to forget to bring this home. It's really important that I show my mom because this is some of my best work. So I decide I'm going to fold the paper up. I folded it twice, and I went into the cubby area where my sweater was hanging up. I had one of these big, bulky, beige cable knit sweaters with brown buttons, and it had huge pockets, and I used to wear this in place of like a light jacket. I just simply got up, walked into the cubby area, put the picture in my pocket, and when I turned to leave, when I turned to go back to my seat, there's the adult who was assigned to my class to watch my class, and she's standing in the doorway, blocking the exit. She's looking down at me condescendingly, and she goes, "Little girl, What are you doing in here? This could have taken all of 10 seconds, but this woman chose to make a federal case out of it. Like if she had just waited a mere 10 seconds, I would have gotten up, put the picture away, and sat back down. And there was no need for a conversation at all. But she confronted me. Little girl, what are you doing in here? I didn't think anything of it. I wasn't afraid of her. I didn't feel like I was in trouble. I simply responded to her like, one grown up to another. I just said, I'm putting my picture in my pocket. So she says to me, why are you doing that? And again, I gave her a very simple answer. I said, well, I really am very proud of what I drew. I want to make sure my mother sees it. So I'm putting it in my pocket so that I don't forget to take it home when we go home. This lady said to me, we're not going home now. I just simply said to this lady, I know. What I mean is that when we do go home, I don't want to forget my picture. And again, she says to me, but we're not going home now. I said, yes, I understand that we're not going home now. What I'm telling you is that later, when we do go home, I want to make sure I don't forget my picture. She says to me again, little girl, we're not going home now. Looking back on this, it's pretty clear to me what was happening. This woman was baiting me. And if you're not familiar with the term baiting is when somebody deliberately tries to provoke you emotionally so that you will experience an outburst because you're so frustrated. And then as an extra bonus, they will often blame you for erupting in this emotional outburst. But I'm not at that point just yet. At this point, I'm still kind of calm, but I'm starting to get agitated. You can hear it in my voice. I'm getting upset and I'm like, no, I understand. I know we're not going home now. What I'm trying to tell you is that later when we do go home, I want to make sure I don't forget my picture. And she just kept saying, little girl, we're not going home now. There's no other way I could explain this better than I did. So after about, 6 or 7 exchanges back and forth, I lost it. I became so frustrated and I felt so crazy. I just burst into tears and started sobbing and wailing. And I just vocalized all my frustration in this loud, bellowing wail. And she just stood there watching me. She did nothing to try to resolve the issue. Most adults that I knew at that time, if you started crying, they would immediately respond to you. They would immediately ask you, what's going on? How can I help? How can I make it better? Right? They would address your emotions. But this lady just stood there staring at me while I cried. There are people out there that get a sense of power by dominating weaker people. And let's face it, there are no weaker individuals than small children. She's blocking the door. I can't see my classmates, but I think I could almost sense that they were empathizing with me silently. It was just an energy in the room. There was a pencil sharpener screwed into the wall. And I remember I grabbed the pencil sharpener with both hands for physical support because I was so emotionally drained by this exchange with this woman. And I even put my forehead on the pencil sharpener because I couldn't even hold my head up. I was just so exhausted and so upset upset. She created the problem, and now as an adult with all the power, she did nothing to resolve the issue. She just let me cry in pain, and I'm telling you, I sensed that she enjoyed it. Well, eventually, my teacher did come back. I mean, a lunch break is only so long. So my teacher comes into the classroom, hears me sobbing, runs right over to this cubby area, and she asks the adult, right? Which would make sense. Like, if I want to know what's going on, I'm going to ask the adult that I left in charge. What happened? This biatch actually said to my teacher, I have no idea. For some reason, this little girl thinks we're going home now, and I keep trying to explain to her that we're not going home, but she doesn't understand. Well, I lifted my head off that pencil sharpener, and I screamed at this woman, "You liar!" Right? And I have to say, I mean, that's one advantage that I did have as a little kid. Little kids don't have to monitor their emotions. They don't have to speak through a filter. So I was able to flat out tell her to her face that she was a liar. And it was a very interesting dynamic too, because you have the adult trying to blame the kid, but then again, the kid had the advantage of knowing her teacher. My teacher knows me. My teacher knows me as the smartest kid in the class, the only kid in the class that knows how to read. So my teacher knows that I'm a good student, that I'm an accelerated student, that I have higher than average communication skills for a 5-year-old. And it's not just me. Any other of my classmates, they're not dumb. We all know what time we go home. We have a routine in kindergarten, and so children know that we do X, Y, Z, and then we go home. So this is complete bull. And I screamed, "You liar!" My teacher got down on her knees, which made herself eye level with me. She put her hands on my upper arms and she looked right into my eyes and said, "Jennifer, tell me what happened." And I can't tell you how validating that was, because she wanted to hear my side of the story. And at this point, I'm like hyperventilating. Like when little kids have been crying so much they can't breathe, So I'm telling her this story like one syllable at a time. I'm like, "I wanted to put my picture in my pocket so I wouldn't forget it when we," and somehow I got through the whole story. And my teacher just patiently listened to me the whole time. And when I got through the story, she nodded her head and said, "Jennifer, I understand you. I understand what you're saying. I know what you meant to do." And she said to me, "Would you let me see the picture you drew? Can I see it?" So I took the picture out of the pocket, opened it up, unfolded it, showed it to her, and she said, "Oh, wow, I can definitely understand why you wouldn't want to forget to bring this one home. This has got to be some of your best work, and I know your mother's going to want to see this. So yes, Jennifer, I understand why you don't want to forget this later when we go home." And then she said to me, "Can I show you something? You see how when you fold this paper, it makes these creases in the paper? Why don't we roll it up instead of folding it?" And she rolled up my paper like a poster. And then she put the poster, the rolled up paper, in the sleeve of my sweater. And she said to me, Now it's protected and there's no creases in the paper. And so when you go home later, you're going to bring this home to your mom and you can unroll it and put it on your fridge. And I know she's going to be so happy with what you did today in class. And she said, do you feel better? And I said, yes, I do. And so she said, okay, go back to your seat. So I went back to my seat and I looked at my teacher and I saw her turn to this woman. And she said to the woman, come here. I want to talk to you. And the two of them went outside the classroom and shut the door. I could not hear what they were saying. I couldn't even really see their facial expressions because, you had that really skinny window in the classrooms. It's like this really skinny rectangle, and all I could see was like my teacher's ear. But I could tell by the way she told that woman, I want to talk to you, she was not happy. And I will never know what transpired when they left the classroom to have that talk. I can tell you, I never saw that woman again in my classroom. I passed her in the hallways a couple times, so she did work there, but she was never recruited to watch over our class ever again. Now, this is just one incident. It must have lasted, 5 minutes, but I felt so powerless and ignored. I felt invisible. I felt like I had no voice. And thank God this teacher came to my rescue. I had another adult to back me up. And all I can think of when I reflect on this situation, I think to myself, wow, this 5-minute encounter was unbearable. But imagine what it was like for somebody who grew up in a home where this was the norm, where their parents treated them like this every day. And there was nobody there to back them up or fight for them. And this is, I think, where a lot of toxic people may have developed their toxic traits because, if I can't count on anybody to help me when I need help, I have to look out for number one. So yeah. Anyway, that's the story of my very first toxic person. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your reactions. Did this inspire any kind of emotional response in you? Please let me know in the comments. I'm Jen Guerriero, and this is Poisonous People. Thanks for watching.